The stars had rules. Every species that reached for the heavens learned this truth. Some rules were written in ancient treaties. Others were carved into the bones of civilizations long dead, but one rule stood above all others. One law that every spacefaring race obeyed without question. Do not enter the Valen exclusion zone. For 12,000 years, this command had held. The zone was a scar across the galaxy. A wound in space marked by warning beacons in 10,000 languages. Ships that wandered too close were turned away by automated defenses older than most species. Those that ignored the warnings simply vanished. No wreckage, no signals, no survivors. The galaxy accepted this. The galaxy moved on. The zone became a legend, then a myth, then simply a place that did not exist on any navigation chart. Then the humans arrived. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Prometheus ascending and watched the void tear open before her ship. Blue fire cascaded across the view screen as the dreadnought punched through the fabric of space itself. Warning lights flashed across every console. Alarms screamed in languages both human and alien. The ship groaned like a living thing in pain. But Elena did not flinch. She was 43 years old. Her hair was silver at the temples now, cut short in military fashion. Her eyes were dark and sharp, the eyes of a woman who had seen too much death to fear it anymore. 20 years in the Terran Union Navy had carved her into something hard and unbreakable. But it was not hardness that drove her now. It was rage. 3 months ago, the research vessel Galileo had vanished. 64 souls. Scientists, engineers, dreamers who wanted to understand the universe. They had been investigating strange signals near the border of the exclusion zone. Standard mission, low risk, or so everyone had believed. When the Galileo stopped responding, Elena had demanded a rescue mission. The Terran Union had agreed, but the Galactic Concord had not. The Concord was old, older than humanity could truly comprehend. 1,000 species bound together by ancient laws and older fears. When the Terran Union requested permission to search for the Galileo, the Concord's response had been immediate and absolute. No. Elena remembered the meeting with Ambassador Vathan. The creature was beautiful in a terrible way. A being of pure light contained in a shell of living crystal. It had existed for 6,000 years. It had seen empires rise and fall, and it had looked at Elena with something that might have been pity. Your people were warned, Vathan had said. Its voice was like wind chimes in a storm. The research vessel approached the exclusion zone. This was forbidden. The zone does not return what it takes. This is known. This has always been known. Those are our people, Elena had replied. We don't leave our people behind. Then you will lose more people trying to save them. This is the way of things. Accept it, Captain. Your species is young. You will learn. Elena had left that meeting with a cold fire burning in her chest. She had filed her report. She had followed protocol. And then she had received new orders from Admiral Chen herself. Find the Galileo. Bring them home. Whatever it takes. The Prometheus ascending was not a research vessel. It was a weapon. 2 kilometers of reinforced hull, quantum shields, and enough firepower to crack a planet in half. It was the pride of the Terran fleet. And now it was doing something no ship had done in 12,000 years. It was entering the forbidden space. Transition complete. Lieutenant Commander David Okonkwo announced from the science station. He was a tall man with skin like polished mahogany, and a voice that remained calm even when everything was falling apart. We are inside the exclusion zone. Elena nodded slowly. Status report. All systems operational. Minor hull stress from the transition, but nothing critical. The quantum shields are holding. Okonkwo paused. His fingers danced across his console. Captain, something strange is happening. Define strange. Every FTL communication beacon within 300 light-years just went dark. All of them. Simultaneously. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. She had expected resistance. She had expected the ancient automated defenses to activate. She had not expected this. Silence. Complete and total silence. Then, one by one, the beacons came back online. Okonkwo's dark eyes went wide. Captain, you need to see this. He transferred the signal to the main view screen. Elena watched as text scrolled across the display. It was a message. A single message being broadcast from every beacon in the sector, translated into 100 languages. repeated over and over again. The humans have entered the forbidden space. Elena stared at those words for a long moment. Then she turned to her communications officer. Lieutenant Park, are we receiving any direct transmissions? Lieutenant Sarah Park was young, barely 25, but she was the best communications specialist in the fleet. Her fingers flew across her console. Thousands of them, Captain. From every major species in the Concord. They're all saying the same thing. Which is, Park swallowed hard. They're asking if it's true. They want to know if we really did it. If we really went in. Elena almost smiled. Almost. Tell them yes. The bridge fell silent. Every officer turned to look at their captain. They had known this mission was dangerous. They had known it might be a one-way trip, but hearing those words, seeing that message broadcast across the stars, made it real in a way nothing else could. They were inside. They had crossed the line. There was no going back. Navigation, Elena said calmly. Plot a course to the Galileo's last known position. Best possible speed. Aye, Captain. The Prometheus ascending turned its bow toward the darkness and began to move. Far across the galaxy, on a station that orbited no star, the High Council of the Galactic Concord gathered for the first time in 2,000 years. The council chamber was vast, large enough to hold representatives from 1,000 species. But only 12 beings sat at the great circular table tonight. The eldest, the leaders of the 12 founding races, creatures so old that they remembered the zone's creation. Ambassador Vathan floated at the head of the table. Its crystal form pulsed with agitated light. The reports are confirmed. A human warship has breached the exclusion zone. They ignored all warnings, all protocols. How is this possible? Demanded Counselor Threx. The being resembled a spider made of smoke and shadow. Its voice was a harsh whisper that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The automated defenses should have destroyed them. Nothing passes the barrier. The humans used something new, Vathan replied. A form of faster-than-light travel we have not seen before. They simply appeared inside the zone, beyond the defenses. Humans. Counselor Mirtha spoke the word like a curse. She was ancient even by Concord standards, a being of living metal whose body had been rebuilt 1,000 times over 10,000 years. They have been part of the galactic community for barely a century. They know nothing. They understand nothing. They understand enough to breach a barrier that has held for 12 millennia, said a quiet voice from the end of the table. Every being turned to look at the speaker. Counselor Idris was the oldest creature in the room, the oldest creature in the known galaxy, some said. No one knew what species Idris had originally been. Its body was hidden beneath robes of woven starlight. Only its face was visible. A mask of silver metal with eyes that glowed like dying suns. Idris had been there when the zone was created. Idris remembered why. The humans do not know what sleeps there, Idris continued. Its voice was soft, tired, the voice of something that had lived too long. They think this is a rescue mission. They think they are being brave. They do not understand that their bravery may doom us all. Then we must stop them, Threx said. Send a fleet. Destroy their ship before they go too deep. It is too late for that. Idris rose slowly from its seat. The moment they entered the zone, they set events in motion that cannot be stopped. The sleeper will sense them, their minds, their warmth, their defiance. It has been hungry for so long. Mirtha's metal body creaked as she leaned forward. What do you suggest we do? Evacuate? Run? Yes. Idris looked around the table. That is exactly what I suggest. Begin evacuating all systems within 500 light-years of the zone. Recall all military assets. Prepare for the worst. The worst? Vathan's light flickered with fear. Idris, speak plainly. What are we facing? Idris was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke a name that had not been uttered in the council chamber for 12,000 years. The Hollow King. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Several counselors flinched. Others looked away. One, a being of pure energy, simply flickered out of existence, fleeing to whatever dimension it called home. That is a myth, Mirtha said, but her voice wavered. A story we tell children to frighten them. It is no myth. Idris turned to face the great window that looked out upon the stars. I was there when we put it to sleep. I watched 1,000 civilizations sacrifice everything they had to contain it. I saw stars die. I saw species end. The Hollow King is real. And if it wakes, it will consume everything. Surely the humans cannot wake it alone, Vathan protested. They are only one ship, one small species. You do not understand humans. Yidris's voice was strange now, almost admiring. In my long life, I have never seen creatures like them. They burn so brightly. They feel so strongly. They hope so fiercely. To the Hollow King, they will be like a flame in eternal darkness. It will feel them. It will want them. And it will wake to take them. Threx made a sound of disgust. Then we should never have allowed them into the Concord. We should have quarantined their planet. Kept them contained. Perhaps. Idris turned back to the table. But what is done is done. The humans are in the zone. The Hollow King will stir. Our only choice now is to prepare for what comes next. And what comes next? Vathan asked. Idris did not answer for a long time. When it finally spoke, its voice was heavy with ancient sorrow. Either the humans die in that darkness, and we have a few more years of peace before the king wakes on its own, or they survive, and we must deal with the consequences of a species that can walk through hell and emerge unbroken. Idris paused. I do not know which outcome frightens me more. Aboard the Prometheus ascending, Captain Vasquez walked through the corridors of her ship. It was late in the ship's cycle, and most of the crew was sleeping. But Elena could not rest. Not tonight. She stopped at a viewport and stared out at the zone. It was wrong. That was the only word for it. The stars here flickered in patterns that made no sense. Space itself seemed to ripple like water disturbed by an unseen stone. Shadows moved where there should be nothing. Light bent in ways that hurt to look at. This was not normal space. This was something else. Something older. Something dangerous. Can't sleep either? Elena turned to find Commander Marcus Webb standing behind her. Her first officer was a big man, with a face like weathered stone, and hands that had seen 100 battles. He had served with Elena for 15 years. There was no one she trusted more. Too many thoughts, Elena admitted. Too many unknowns. Webb nodded and moved to stand beside her at the viewport. The crew is scared. They're hiding it well. But I can tell. Half of them think we're flying into our graves. Are they wrong? Maybe not. Webb shrugged. But they came anyway. Every single one of them volunteered for this mission, even after I told them what we were doing. Even after I told them we might not come back. Elena felt a warmth spread through her chest. Pride. Gratitude. Something she could not quite name. That's what makes us human, Marcus. We don't leave our people behind, even when it's stupid, even when it's suicide. The Concord thinks we're insane. The Concord thinks a lot of things. Elena's voice hardened. They think we're children playing with fire. They think we should know our place, accept our losses, move on. She shook her head. They've been out here for millions of years. They've built empires that span galaxies. But somewhere along the way, they forgot something important. What's that? Elena turned to look at her old friend. They forgot how to fight for what matters. They got so old, so careful, so afraid of losing what they have that they stopped being willing to risk anything. But that's not who we are. That's not who humans will ever be. Webb was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. A rare expression on his stern face. The Galileo's crew. You think they're still alive? I don't know, Elena admitted. But I have to believe they are. I have to believe we can save them. Because if I don't believe that, then what's the point of any of this? Before Webb could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Captain to the bridge. Priority 1. Elena and Webb exchanged a glance, then moved. The bridge was a controlled chaos of activity when they arrived. Officers were shouting readings at each other. Screens were flashing with data that made no sense. At the center of it all, Okonkwo stood at his console with an expression of pure scientific wonder. Report, Elena snapped. Captain, we're picking up something on long-range sensors. Okonkwo's fingers flew across his controls. A planet. But that's impossible. According to every survey we have, there shouldn't be any planets in this region of the zone. Show me. The main view screen shifted. Elena saw it then. A world hanging in the void. Black as coal. No atmosphere. No oceans. No signs of life. But there was something else. Something that made every human on the bridge catch their breath. The planet was surrounded by ships. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. Ships of every size and configuration. Ships from civilizations that had died before humanity's ancestors climbed down from the trees. They hung in perfect stillness around the dark world, caught in an eternal orbit, a graveyard, a tomb, a monument to failure. My God, Webb whispered. That's not all. Okonkwo pulled up another reading. Captain, I'm detecting a signal. Faint, but definitely artificial. It's coming from the planet's surface. Elena's heart began to pound. Can you identify it? Okonkwo nodded slowly. It's the Galileo's emergency beacon. They're down there. Our people are on that planet. Elena stared at the black world on the screen, at the thousands of dead ships surrounding it, at the darkness that seemed to pulse like a slow heartbeat in the void. Something was wrong here. Something was very, very wrong. But the Galileo was down there. Her people were down there. And Elena Vasquez did not leave her people behind. Set a course for that planet, she ordered. All hands to battle stations. Whatever we find down there, we're bringing our people home. The Prometheus Ascending adjusted its heading and began its approach toward the black world. Across the galaxy, beings who had not prayed in millennia turned to whatever gods they remembered. Fleets that had slept for eons began to stir. Ancient weapons powered up for the first time in 10,000 years. And deep beneath the surface of that impossible planet, in a prison built before the first stars died, something that had slept for 12,000 years felt the warmth of human minds approaching. The Hollow King opened one eye and smiled. The black planet grew larger on the view screen with every passing hour. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at her station and watched it approach. She had seen many worlds in her 20 years of service. Beautiful worlds with golden oceans, harsh worlds of ice and stone, dead worlds burned clean by ancient wars. But she had never seen anything like this. The planet was wrong. That was the only word for it. It did not reflect light the way a normal world should. Instead, it seemed to swallow it, to drink it in. Looking at it too long made Elena's head ache, made her eyes water, made something deep in her brain whisper that she should turn around and run. She ignored that voice. She had work to do. Status report, she called out. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo looked up from his science station. Dark circles ringed his eyes. None of them had slept much since entering the zone. We're 30 minutes from orbital insertion, Captain. The derelict ships around the planet have not responded to any of our signals. I don't think they have any power at all. How many ships are we looking at? Okonkwo hesitated. My best estimate is somewhere between 40 and 50,000. Captain. Ships from at least 300 different species. Some of these designs are so old that they predate any records we have. Commander Webb stepped forward. 300 species. All dead. All gathered around this one planet. He shook his head slowly. What happened here? I've been analyzing the wreckage, Okonkwo replied. There are no signs of weapons damage, no hull breaches, no evidence of combat at all. These ships just stopped. Their crews died at their stations. It's like something simply turned them off. Elena felt a cold knot forming in her stomach. Any theories? Nothing scientific. Okonkwo looked uncomfortable. But there are legends, Captain. Old stories from species that died before humans discovered fire. Stories about a presence in the deep void. Something that feeds on awareness, on thought, on the spark that makes life different from mere matter. You're talking about the Hollow King, Elena said quietly. The bridge went silent. Every officer turned to look at their captain. I did my research before we left, Elena continued. I read everything I could find about the exclusion zone. Most of it was classified. Most of it was sealed away in archives that haven't been opened in 10,000 years. But I found references. Fragments. Whispers of something ancient and hungry locked away in this region of space. And you still came here? Lieutenant Park asked. Her voice was small. I came here because our people are down on that planet. Elena's voice was steady, certain. Whatever is in this place, whatever happened to these ships, the Galileo's beacon is still active. That means someone is still alive. And as long as there's a chance to save them, I will not run. She looked around the bridge at her crew. They were afraid. She could see it in their eyes, feel it in the air. But they were still here, still doing their jobs, still ready to follow her into the dark. That was enough. Continue the approach, Elena ordered. And wake Dr. Santos. I want a full medical team ready for immediate response. We're getting our people back. The Prometheus ascending slid into orbit around the black planet. Below them, the dark surface stretched away to every horizon. Mountains that had never known sunlight. Valleys carved by forces that had nothing to do with wind or water. And scattered across the landscape, structures. Okonkwo was the first to notice them. "Captain, I'm detecting artificial constructions on the surface. They're massive. Some of them are larger than cities. What kind of constructions?" I'm not sure." Okonkwo frowned at his readings. "They don't match any known architectural style. The geometry is strange. Angles that shouldn't be possible. Materials that don't exist on our periodic table." He paused. "If I had to guess, I would say these buildings are older than the galaxy itself." "Older than the galaxy?" Webb raised an eyebrow. "That's impossible. Many impossible things have happened since we entered this zone, Commander." Elena studied the sensor readouts. The structures were concentrated around a single location near the planet's equator, a massive complex that covered thousands of square kilometers, and at its center, barely visible through the planet's strange atmosphere, was the Galileo. "There," she said, pointing at the screen. "That's where they went down. That's where we need to go." "Captain." Dr. Maya Santos stepped onto the bridge. The ship's chief medical officer was a small woman with gray-streaked hair and hands that had saved thousands of lives. "I've been monitoring the planet's atmosphere. You're not going to like what I found." "Tell me." "The atmosphere is breathable. Barely. Oxygen levels are low, but survivable with standard equipment. But there's something else in the air. Something my instruments can't identify. A kind of background radiation that affects neural activity." "In plain words, Doctor." Santos took a deep breath. "The planet drives people insane, Captain. The longer you stay on the surface, the more it affects your mind. Based on my readings, a human could survive down there for maybe 6 hours before suffering permanent psychological damage. The Galileo's crew has been down there for 3 months." Santos nodded slowly. "I know. I don't know how anyone could survive that long. Maybe they found shelter. Maybe the structures provide some protection. Or maybe..." She trailed off. "Maybe what?" "Maybe they're not the same people anymore." Elena absorbed this information. 6 hours. That was all they had. 6 hours to find the survivors, get them off the planet, and return to the ship. It would be tight. It might be impossible. But she had never let impossible stop her before. "Lieutenant Park, send a message to the Galileo. Tell them help is coming. Tell them to hold on." "Aye, Captain." "Commander Webb, I want a full-away team assembled. Marines, medical staff, engineers, everyone in environmental suits with maximum radiation shielding. We leave in 1 hour." Webb hesitated. "Captain, regulations say the commanding officer shouldn't lead away missions into hostile territory." "Marcus." Elena looked at her old friend. "Those are my people down there. I sent them on that mission. I promised their families I would keep them safe. I'm going." Webb held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Yes, ma'am." 1 hour later, the dropship launched from the Prometheus ascending and began its descent to the surface. Elena sat in the cockpit with Webb at her side. Behind them, 20 of the ship's best soldiers and specialists checked their equipment. The mood was tense. Quiet. Every person on that ship knew they might not be coming back. The descent through the atmosphere was rough. The planet's strange gravity pulled at the ship in unexpected ways. Shadows moved outside the windows that had nothing to do with clouds or terrain. Lieutenant Park had established a continuous communication link with the Prometheus, but the signal kept breaking up. Static filled the channel like whispers in a dead language. "Coming up on the landing zone," the pilot announced. 60 seconds. Elena looked out the window. Below them, the alien structures rose from the black landscape like frozen nightmares. Towers that bent in impossible directions. Domes that seemed bigger on the inside than the outside. Bridges that connected nothing to nothing, stretching over chasms that went down forever. And at the center of it all, the Galileo. The research vessel was intact, sitting in what looked like a courtyard surrounded by the ancient buildings. Its running lights were still on. Someone was still alive in there. The dropship touched down 50 meters from the Galileo. The rear ramp lowered with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Elena was the first one out. The air was cold. So cold that her environmental suit immediately began heating to compensate. The ground beneath her feet was made of some dark crystal that reflected her image back at her in distorted fragments. Every step she took made a sound like breaking ice. "Spread out," she ordered. "Secure the perimeter. Medical team, with me." They moved toward the Galileo. The ship looked undamaged from the outside. No hull breaches, no scorch marks, no signs of attack. It simply sat there, silent and still, like a toy abandoned by a giant child. Elena reached the main airlock and keyed in her authorization code. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with a grinding sound that spoke of damaged mechanisms, the outer door slid open. The smell hit her first. Stale air. Recycled too many times. The smell of people living in fear. "Hello?" she called out. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Prometheus Ascending. We're here to help. Is anyone alive in there?" Silence. Then, from somewhere deep in the ship, a voice. Weak, trembling, but unmistakably human. "Captain? Captain Vasquez? Is that really you?" Elena felt her heart leap. "Yes, we're here. We're coming to get you." "Where are you?" "The cargo bay." "We're all in the cargo bay. Please, please hurry. It knows you're here. It's been waiting for you." Elena didn't let herself think about what that might mean. She simply moved. Through the corridors of the silent ship, past stations covered in dust, past screens displaying error messages that had been looping for months, past words written on the walls in something that might have been blood. "Do not look at it. It sees through your eyes. The cage is open." Elena kept moving. The cargo bay door was sealed from the inside. She could hear sounds from within. Movement, breathing, the soft murmur of voices trying to stay quiet. "This is Captain Vasquez. I'm opening the door. Please stay calm." She overrode the lock and the door slid open. There were 12 of them. 12 survivors out of a crew of 64. They huddled together in the corner of the cargo bay, wrapped in thermal blankets, their eyes wide and haunted. Some of them were crying. Others simply stared at nothing, their minds somewhere far away. Dr. Chen was among them. Elena recognized her from the personnel files. The mission's lead scientist, a brilliant woman who had spent 30 years studying the mysteries of the universe. Now she sat on the floor with her arms wrapped around her knees, rocking back and forth like a frightened child. In her hands, she clutched a data core. Her fingers were white around it. Her nails had carved grooves into its surface. Elena knelt down beside her. "Dr. Chen, can you hear me?" Chen's eyes focused slowly. Recognition flickered across her face. "You came. We didn't. We didn't think anyone would come. We don't leave our people behind. Can you stand? We need to get you out of here." "No." Chen's grip on the data core tightened. "You don't understand. You can't leave. Not until you see what we found. Not until you understand what we did." "What did you find?" Chen began to cry. Tears streamed down her face, cutting tracks through the dirt and grime. But when she spoke, her voice was steady. The voice of a scientist delivering a final report. "This place is a prison, Captain. A prison built before our son was born. Before any son was born. The beings who built it, they weren't from our universe. They came from somewhere else. Somewhere outside everything we know." "What were they keeping prisoner?" Chen looked up at Elena. In her eyes was a terror so deep, so absolute, that Elena felt her own heart freeze in her chest. "They called it the Hollow King. A consciousness so vast that it took the combined power of 1,000 civilizations to contain it. A hunger so deep that it ate stars like candy. A mind so alien that to perceive it fully is to lose yourself forever." Chen's voice dropped to a whisper. "And we opened its cage, Captain. We opened its cage." Before Elena could respond, the ground beneath them began to shake. It started as a low rumble, like distant thunder, but it grew louder, stronger. The walls of the cargo bay began to crack. Dust fell from the ceiling. The survivors screamed and clutched at each other. "What's happening?" Webb shouted. Okonkwo's voice crackled over the communication link from orbit. "Captain, something is happening on the planet. We're detecting massive seismic activity centered beneath your location. Something is rising." Elena grabbed Dr. Chen's arm. "We need to go. Now. It's too late." Chen was laughing now. A horrible, broken sound. "It knows you're here. It felt your minds, your warmth, your hope. It hasn't felt hope in 12,000 years. It's so hungry, Captain, so very hungry." The floor of the cargo bay split open. Elena barely had time to throw herself backward before a chasm opened where she had been standing. She caught a glimpse of what lay below. Darkness. Not the absence of light, but something more. Something that moved. Something that watched. Something that smiled. "Everyone out!" she screamed. "Get to the dropship! Move!" The Marines didn't need to be told twice. They grabbed the survivors and ran. Some of them had to be carried. Others were dragged, but within seconds, they were moving through the corridors of the Galileo, heading for the exit, heading for safety. Behind them, the ship began to tear itself apart. Elena was the last one out. She burst through the airlock just as the Galileo collapsed into the growing chasm. The ground around her was cracking now, great fissures spreading in every direction, like lightning frozen in stone. And from those fissures, something was emerging. It had no true form. Or perhaps it had too many forms. Elena's eyes refused to focus on it. Her brain refused to process what she was seeing. But she felt it. A presence so vast that it made the planet seem small. A hunger so deep that it made the void of space seem warm. The Hollow King was waking. "Run!" Elena screamed. "Run for your lives." They ran. The dropship pilot had kept the engines hot. The ramp was already lowering as they approached. Marines threw survivors aboard without ceremony. Elena counted heads as they passed her. 10 survivors. 11. 12. She was the last one up the ramp. "Go!" She screamed at the pilot. "Go, go, go." The dropship lifted off just as the ground beneath it crumbled away. Elena watched through the rear window as the alien structures collapsed into the spreading darkness. Towers that had stood for billions of years falling like toys. The entire planet was coming apart. And at the center of the destruction, something was rising. It was bigger than mountains, bigger than continents. A shadow that swallowed light, a void that moved, and it was looking at them. Elena felt its attention like a physical weight, a pressure against her mind. A voice that spoke without words, small things, bright things, warm things. "I have waited so long." The dropship screamed through the atmosphere. Behind them, the black planet cracked open like an egg. The darkness within spread outward, swallowing the thousands of dead ships that had orbited it for millennia. They reached the Prometheus ascending seconds before the planet died completely. Elena stumbled onto the bridge just as the main view screen showed the final moments. Where the black planet had been, there was now only darkness, a hole in space, a wound in reality. And within that wound, something moved, something vast, something ancient, something that had been sleeping for 12,000 years and was now, finally, fully awake. "Captain," Okonkwo whispered. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. "What do we do?" Elena looked at the horror on the view screen. She thought of the 12 survivors in the medical bay. She thought of her crew. She thought of Earth. She thought of every human who had ever looked at the stars and refused to be afraid. "Get me a line to the Galactic Concord," she said. "Humanity needs to have a conversation with the galaxy." On the view screen, the Hollow King unfolded itself into normal space, and reality screamed. The medical bay of the Prometheus ascending had never seen this many patients. Dr. Santos moved between beds with the calm efficiency of someone who had tended wounds on a dozen battlefields, but even she could not hide the fear in her eyes. 12 survivors from the Galileo. 12 out of 64. And of those 12, only 3 could speak clearly. The others lay in their beds, staring at ceilings they could not see, lost in nightmares they could not escape. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the doorway and watched. She had not slept in 36 hours. Her body screamed for rest, but rest was a luxury she could not afford. Not now. Not with what was happening outside. "How are they?" she asked quietly. Dr. Santos looked up from her current patient. "Alive, for now. But their minds." She shook her head. 3 months on that planet, Captain. 3 months exposed to whatever that thing is. I don't know if they'll ever fully recover." Elena nodded. She had seen the recordings from Dr. Chen's data core. She wished she hadn't. The Galileo's crew had found the structures on the planet within hours of landing. They had been curious. Scientists, after all. Seekers of knowledge. They had explored the ancient buildings, documented the impossible architecture, marveled at technology that predated the stars themselves, and then they had found the chamber at the center of it all. The recordings became fragmentary after that. Static, screams, images that hurt to look at. But the audio was clear enough. clear enough to hear Dr. Chen realize what they had stumbled upon, clear enough to hear her desperate attempts to seal the chamber again, clear enough to hear the moment the Hollow King began to wake. "She's asking for you," Santos said. "Chen. She says she needs to show you something." Elena walked to Dr. Chen's bed. The woman looked worse than she had on the planet. Her skin was gray. Her eyes were sunken. She seemed to have aged 20 years in the hours since the rescue, but her grip was still strong when she grabbed Elena's hand. "Did you watch the recordings?" Chen whispered. "Yes." "Then you know what we did." "What I did." Tears leaked from Chen's eyes. "I opened the cage. I thought it was just a structure, an artifact. I didn't know what was inside. I didn't know. No one blames you, Doctor. Blame doesn't matter anymore." Chen's voice grew urgent. "What matters is stopping it. And there might be a way." Elena leaned closer. "What do you mean?" "The beings who built the prison. They didn't just contain the Hollow King. They designed a failsafe, a weapon, a way to destroy it permanently." Chen's eyes flickered with something that might have been hope. "It's in the data core, the instructions, the schematics, everything we need. Why didn't the original builders use it?" Chen was quiet for a moment. "Because activating it requires someone to enter the heart of the Hollow King's prison while the entity is active. Someone has to interface directly with the weapon, channel their consciousness through it, become the spark that ignites the fire. And what happens to that person?" Chen looked away. "The weapon doesn't just destroy the Hollow King, Captain. It destroys everything connected to it. The person who activates it, they become part of the destruction, their mind, their soul, everything they are." She paused. "It's a one-way trip." Elena absorbed this information. A weapon that could kill a god, but only if someone was willing to die to use it. Only if someone was willing to sacrifice not just their life, but their very existence. "The ancient builders were afraid," Chen continued. "They had beaten the Hollow King, forced it into dormancy. They thought they had time to find another way, a safer way. But they never did, and now." She gestured weakly at the ceiling, at the void beyond. "Now it's awake, and it's hungry. How long do we have?" "Based on the data we recovered, maybe 40 hours before it reaches full consciousness. Right now, it's still waking up, still gathering its strength, but once it's fully awake," Chen shuddered, "it will start with the nearest star. It will consume it, absorb its energy, and then it will move on to the next, and the next, and the next, until there's nothing left." Elena stood up. Her mind was racing. 40 hours. Less than 2 days to prepare a weapon that no one had dared to use in 12,000 years. To find someone willing to die in a way that meant true death. Complete annihilation. No afterlife. No legacy. Just nothing. "Get the data core to Okonkwo," she ordered. "Have him analyze everything. I want to know exactly what we need to build this weapon and how." "Captain." Chen's voice stopped her at the door. The builders were 1,000 civilizations working together. They had technology we can't even imagine. Resources beyond counting. We're one ship. How can we possibly succeed where they were too afraid to try? Elena looked back at the woman in the bed, at her haunted eyes, her broken spirit, and she smiled. "They were afraid," she said simply. "We're not." Then she walked out to save the galaxy. The bridge of the Prometheus was chaos when Elena arrived. Every station was manned. Every screen showed different data. In the center of it all, Okonkwo stood before a holographic display of the Hollow King, his face lit by the ghostly blue light. "Report," Elena ordered. Okonkwo didn't look up from his work. "The entity is still expanding, Captain. It's consumed what was left of the prison planet, and most of the derelict ships around it. Current diameter is approximately 4,000 kilometers and growing. That doesn't sound like much. It's not physical matter, Captain. It's something else. A void in reality. A place where the rules of our universe don't apply." Okonkwo finally turned to face her. "But you're right. In cosmic terms, it's still small. Still weak. Still waking up. How long until it's fully awake?" Chen's estimate of 40 hours was optimistic. "Based on my analysis, I'd say we have maybe 35 hours. Maybe less." Elena nodded. "And the weapon?" Okonkwo pulled up a new display. Complex diagrams filled the air, equations that made Elena's head hurt to look at. The ancients called it the resonance core. It's basically a device that inverts the Hollow King's own energy against itself, forces it to collapse into its own void. Can we build it? In theory, yes. The components exist aboard our ship. We have quantum processors, antimatter containment units, exotic matter reserves from our FTL drive. Okonkwo hesitated, but the power requirements are enormous. To generate the resonance field, we'd need to channel the entire output of our main reactor through a single interface point. What kind of interface point? Okonkwo was quiet for a long moment. A neural interface, Captain. The weapon requires a living consciousness to direct it, to shape the resonance field, to guide the collapse. He met her eyes. The person who activates it will be connected directly to the Hollow King. They'll experience everything it experiences, feel everything it feels, and when it dies, they die with it, Chen told me. Then you know what I'm about to say. Okonkwo's voice was heavy. This mission is suicide, Captain. Whoever activates the resonance core won't just die. They'll be erased, completely and utterly. No trace left. No way to honor their memory. Just nothing. I know. And you're still going to do it? Elena looked at the holographic image of the Hollow King, at the darkness that had consumed civilizations, at the hunger that had no end. Someone has to. Before Okonkwo could respond, Lieutenant Park's voice cut through the bridge. Captain, we're receiving a transmission. Multiple transmissions. From the Galactic Concord. Put them on screen. The main view screen split into dozens of smaller images. Faces of every shape and form. Beings of light and shadow. Metal and flesh. Energy and thought. The leaders of the galaxy's oldest civilizations. All staring at Elena with expressions she couldn't read. Ambassador Vathan spoke first. Captain Vasquez. The Concorde has been monitoring events in the exclusion zone. We know what has happened. We know what is waking. Then you know we need help, Elena replied. The Hollow King is coming. In less than 2 days, it will be at full strength. And then, nothing will be able to stop it. Nothing can stop it now. The voice came from Counselor Mirtha. The ancient being of living metal sounded tired, defeated. The Hollow King cannot be killed. It cannot be contained again. The only option is to flee, to evacuate as many as possible beyond the galactic rim, to hide and hope. With respect, Counselor, that's not an option. We have a weapon, the resonance core, the same weapon the original builders designed. Silence fell across the channel. Then Counselor Idris spoke, its silver mask filling one section of the screen. You found the failsafe. There was something strange in Idris's voice, something Elena couldn't identify. We knew it existed. We knew the builders had created it. But we believed it lost. Destroyed when the prison was sealed. It wasn't lost. It was waiting. The Galileo's crew recovered all the data needed to construct it. And do you understand what activating it requires? Yes. Do you understand that whoever enters the Hollow King's heart to use it will be completely destroyed? Not killed. Not transformed. Destroyed. Erased from existence itself. Yes. Another silence. Longer this time. Then Idris spoke again. And now Elena could identify the emotion in its voice. Wonder. You would do this? One of your people would willingly choose complete annihilation to destroy the Hollow King? Elena thought of her crew. Of the volunteers who had followed her into forbidden space. Of the humans who had looked at the impossible and refused to look away. We don't leave our galaxy behind, she said. Even when it's stupid. Even when it's suicide. You are insane, Counselor Threx hissed. You are all insane, maybe. But we're also your only hope. The Concorde representatives erupted into chaos. Arguments in 100 languages, accusations, denials, fear given voice. Through it all, Idris remained silent, watching Elena with those glowing eyes. Finally, the ancient being raised a hand. Somehow, that single gesture cut through the noise, silenced the arguments, drew every eye. The humans are right, Idris said. The resonance core is our only option. The Hollow King is already waking. Fleeing will only delay the inevitable. Either we fight now, while the entity is still weak, or we die slowly as it consumes everything we know. Then let the humans die for their foolishness, Mirtha snapped. Why should we risk ourselves for their mistake? Because this is not their mistake alone. Idris's voice was sharp. The humans opened the cage. Yes, but we sealed it. We chose containment over destruction. We chose fear over sacrifice. For 12,000 years, we told ourselves we were wise. We told ourselves there would be time. But there was never time. There was only delay. And now the delay is over. The old being turned to face the screen directly. I will help you, Captain Vasquez. I will provide what knowledge I have of the Hollow King, of its nature, of its weaknesses, and I will support your mission before the Concord. Why? Elena asked. Why help us? Idris was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was soft, almost gentle. Because in all my long years I have never seen anything like your species. You burn so brightly. You hope so fiercely. You fight so hard, even when fighting seems pointless. The ancient being paused. The builders who created the resonance core were afraid to use it. They were ancient and powerful and wise, and they were afraid. But you are young and small and reckless, and you are not afraid. Perhaps that is what the galaxy needs. Perhaps that is what the galaxy has always needed. The other counselors began to argue again, but Idris ignored them. It simply nodded once to Elena, a gesture of respect from a being that had seen empires rise and fall, and then cut its transmission. One by one, other representatives dropped from the channel, some in anger, some in fear, some in something that might have been shame. But as they left, new signals began to appear. Ships, hundreds of ships, breaking from their positions around the galaxy and setting course for the exclusion zone. Captain, Park reported, we're receiving status updates from multiple vessels, Concord military ships, private craft, even some civilian transports. She looked up, her eyes wide. They're coming to help. Elena stared at the screen, at the tiny lights converging on their position from every direction, at the galaxy rallying to fight against the darkness. How many? She asked. At current count, over 300 ships, and more, arriving every minute. 300 ships, a fleet born of desperation and hope. It wasn't much against a god, but it was something. Open a channel to all approaching vessels, Elena ordered. Tell them we welcome their help. Tell them we're going to need every ship we can get. And tell them, she paused, tell them humanity is honored to stand beside them. As the transmission went out, Elena allowed herself a moment of something almost like hope. They had a weapon. They had allies. They had a chance. Now they just needed someone willing to die. She looked at her hands. Strong hands. Capable hands. The hands of a woman who had spent her life protecting others. Maybe it would be her. Maybe she would be the one to enter the heart of the Hollow King. To feel a god die around her. To be erased from existence. It wasn't such a bad way to go, she thought. Not such a bad way at all. Outside the view screen, the Hollow King continued to grow. Its darkness spread across the void like a stain. Stars that had burned for billions of years began to dim as its influence reached them. The clock was ticking, and humanity was just getting started. 20 hours remained. The Prometheus ascending had transformed into something between a shipyard and a war room. Engineers worked around the clock in the main cargo bay, assembling the resonance core from components stripped from every available source. Quantum processors from the navigation systems. Antimatter containment units from the weapons array. Exotic matter carefully extracted from the FTL drive itself. The ship could no longer jump to faster than light speeds. It could barely defend itself. But none of that mattered anymore. If they failed here, there would be nowhere to jump to. Nothing to defend. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on a observation platform above the construction site and watched her people work. They moved with desperate efficiency. No wasted motion, no unnecessary words. Every person knew what was at stake. Every person had chosen to be here. That was what made them human. The core will be ready in 12 hours, Commander Webb reported, stepping up beside her. Okonkwo says the power systems are calibrated. The neural interface is being tested now. Any volunteers? Webb was quiet for a moment. Everyone. Captain. Every single member of the crew has volunteered to operate the core. Elena closed her eyes. Of course they had. Of course they had. We need to choose someone. Webb continued. Okonkwo says the neural interface works better with certain brain patterns. Something about resonance frequencies and consciousness mapping. He's been testing the crew to find the best match. And? You're at the top of the list. Elena opened her eyes and looked at her old friend. He stared back at her with that weathered stone face, giving nothing away. But she knew him well enough to see the fear hidden in his eyes, the grief already forming. "I figured as much," she said quietly. "Captain, don't, Marcus. We both knew this was coming. Someone has to do it. Someone has to enter that thing and turn the key. If I'm the best match, then I'm the best match. There has to be another way." "There isn't." Elena turned to face him fully. "I've read the data. I've talked to Yidris. The resonance core requires a conscious mind to direct it. Not a computer, not an AI. A living, thinking, feeling person. And that person will be destroyed in the process. There's no trick, no loophole. Just sacrifice." Webb's jaw tightened. "Then let me do it. My neural patterns are close enough to yours. I could." "No, Captain. No, Marcus." Elena's voice was gentle but firm. "You have a family, a wife, children, grandchildren on the way. You have something to live for, something to go back to. And you don't?" Elena smiled, a sad, tired smile. "I have the Navy. I have this ship. I have my duty. That's been enough for me for 20 years. It'll be enough for me at the end." Before Webb could argue further, Lieutenant Park's voice echoed through the cargo bay. "Captain to the bridge. Priority Alpha. Multiple contacts emerging from FTL." Elena and Webb exchanged a look, then moved. The bridge was alive with activity when they arrived. Sensor data streamed across every screen. Officers called out readings in rapid succession, and on the main view screen, a sight that made Elena's breath catch in her throat. Ships, hundreds of ships, dropping out of FTL space in formation around the Prometheus. Concord warships, with hulls of crystal and light. Rethany battlecruisers, ancient and terrible. Vessels from species Elena had never seen, their designs alien beyond imagining. And at the center of the forming fleet, a single ship, larger than any other. A craft that looked less like a vessel and more like a living cathedral. The flagship of Counselor Yidris. "We're receiving a transmission from the Concord fleet," Park reported. "It's Yidris. Put it through." The ancient being's silver mask filled the screen. "Captain Vasquez, we have come as promised." "I see that." Elena surveyed the fleet around her. "How many ships?" 473. It would have been more, but many were too afraid to answer the call. Yidris paused. "They will regret their cowardice when history is written, assuming there is anyone left to write it. It's more than we expected. It is less than we need. But it is what we have." Yidris leaned forward, its glowing eyes fixed on Elena. "The Hollow King has grown since our last communication. It has consumed the outer stars of 3 systems. Its influence now extends across 50 light-years. Wherever its shadow falls, life withers. Minds break. Hope dies." Elena had seen the reports. Entire colonies going dark. Ships stopping mid-flight. Their crews dead at their stations. The entity didn't just kill. It fed. It drained. It took everything that made life worth living and left empty shells behind. "How long until it reaches critical mass?" she asked. 18 hours. Perhaps less. Once it achieves full consciousness, nothing will be able to stop it. It will spread across the galaxy like fire across dry grass. Every star, every planet, every thinking being, gone. All of it gone. Then we need to move fast. "Indeed." Yidris tilted its head. "I understand you have found someone to operate the resonance core." Elena felt Webb tense beside her. She ignored it. "Yes, I'll be doing it myself." The bridge went silent. Every officer turned to look at their captain, some with shock, some with grief, some with something that might have been pride. Yidris was quiet for a long moment. "You understand what this means. What will happen to you?" "I do. You will not simply die. Your consciousness will be connected to the Hollow King at the moment of its destruction. You will experience its death. Feel what it feels, know what it knows. And then you will be pulled into the void with it. Erased. Completely and utterly. I know. There will be nothing left of you. No soul. No afterlife. No memory in the universe. Just emptiness where you once existed." Elena met those ancient, glowing eyes. "I know. And I'm still going to do it. Because that's what humans do. We fight for what matters, even when the cost is everything." Yidris stared at her. In its eyes, Elena saw something she hadn't expected to see in such an ancient being. Respect. The galaxy does not deserve your sacrifice, Captain Vasquez. Maybe not. But I'm not doing it for the galaxy. I'm doing it for the people I love, for the world that raised me, for every human who ever looked at the stars and dreamed of something greater. Elena straightened her spine. If my death means they get to keep dreaming, then it's worth it. It's worth everything. The transmission ended. The fleet began to move into formation around the Prometheus, and on the bridge of the human dreadnought, something shifted. Something changed. The fear didn't go away, but something else rose up beside it. Something stronger. Determination. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo stepped forward. Captain, the resonance core will be ready in 10 hours. I recommend we begin final preparations now. Elena nodded. Agreed. Commander Webb, coordinate with the fleet. I want every ship in position before we begin our approach. Yes, ma'am. Lieutenant Park, keep communication channels open with all allied vessels. I want real-time updates on the Hollow King's movements. Understood, Captain. And someone find Dr. Santos. I want a full medical check before I interface with the core. Elena paused. Just in case there are any messages I need to record, the bridge crew moved to their tasks. But Elena caught the looks they gave her as they worked. The silent gratitude, the unspoken farewells, the love that human beings showed each other in the face of death. She would miss them. All of them. Even if there would be nothing left of her to do the missing. But that was okay. That was the price. And she would pay it gladly. The hours passed too quickly. The resonance core took shape in the cargo bay. A sphere of crystal and light, pulsing with energy that made Elena's teeth ache. At its center, a single chair. A neural interface. A place where a human mind would connect to the heart of an ancient god. Around the Prometheus, the fleet moved into position. Conquered warships formed a protective shell around the human dreadnought. Fighters launched from carrier bays. Weapons systems powered up to full capacity. They weren't going to fight the Hollow King directly. That was impossible. But they could clear a path. They could buy time. They could give the Prometheus the opening it needed to reach the entity's core. Many of them would die. Most of them, probably. But they came anyway. Species that had hidden from the dark for millennia now flew toward it with weapons hot. Because a single human woman had shown them what courage looked like. Elena spent her final hours saying goodbye. She visited Dr. Chen in the medical bay. The scientist was recovering slowly. Her mind was damaged, but not beyond repair. She would live. She would heal. And someday, she would understand that none of this was her fault. I'm sorry, Chen whispered as Elena held her hand. Don't be. You found the weapon. You gave us a chance. That's more than anyone could ask for. She visited the Galileo survivors. 11 souls who would carry the scars of their ordeal forever. But 11 souls who were alive, who would go home, who would see their families again. Tell them what happened here, Elena said. Tell them about the ship that came for you. Tell them about the people who wouldn't give up. And tell them, she paused, tell them to never stop looking at the stars. She visited her crew. Every department, every station. She shook hands and accepted embraces and listened to words of gratitude that she knew she didn't deserve. These people had followed her into hell. They deserved a captain who could lead them back out. But this time, she wouldn't be making the return trip. Finally, she stood alone in her quarters. The room was small, sparse, the quarters of a woman who had never needed much. A few photographs on the wall. Her parents, long dead. Her crew, still living. The Earth seen from orbit, blue and green and beautiful. She recorded her final message, not to anyone specific, just to humanity, to the species she had spent her life serving. My name is Elena Vasquez, she said to the camera, captain of the Prometheus ascending. And by the time you see this, I'll be gone. Not dead. Gone. There's a difference, apparently. I've been told there won't be anything left of me. No soul. No ghost. Just emptiness. And I want you to know, I'm okay with that, because I'm not doing this for glory, not doing it for history. I'm doing it because somewhere, right now, a little girl is looking up at the night sky and wondering what's out there. And I want her to have the chance to find out. I want her to have stars to dream about, a future to hope for, a galaxy full of wonders waiting to be discovered. If my death buys her that chance, then it's not really death at all. It's a gift. The only gift I have left to give, So dream big, little one. Dream bigger than anyone ever has. And when you reach the stars, remember the people who made it possible. Not just me, everyone who ever sacrificed something so that tomorrow could be better than today. We're all in this together. We always have been. Goodbye. And good luck. She ended the recording and set it to be transmitted after the mission was complete. Then she stood, straightened her uniform, and walked to the bridge. It was time. All systems ready, Captain, Okonkwo reported. The fleet is in position. The Hollow King is directly ahead. Distance, approximately 500,000 kilometers. On the view screen, the entity filled the void. It had grown since Elena had last seen it. A darkness that swallowed stars. A void that pulsed with something that was not quite life. It knew they were here. She could feel it. A pressure against her mind. A whisper that promised peace if she would just surrender. Just give up. Just stop fighting. She ignored it. Begin the approach, she ordered. All ships advance. The fleet moved forward as one. 400 ships of every design and configuration, flying into the throat of oblivion. The Hollow King's attention shifted to them. Elena felt its amusement, its hunger, its absolute certainty that nothing they could do would make any difference. Small things, bright things, warm things. Why do you struggle? Why do you hope? There is no hope. There is only me. Elena opened a channel to every ship in the fleet. Every being in the armada heard her voice. My name is Elena Vasquez, she said. I'm nobody special, just a human, just one small person in a very big universe. But I've learned something in my years among the stars. I've learned that size doesn't matter, power doesn't matter, age doesn't matter. What matters is what you're willing to fight for, what you're willing to die for, what you're willing to give everything to protect. She paused. Ahead, the Hollow King's darkness grew. That thing out there thinks we're afraid of it. It thinks we'll break and run like every other civilization it's faced. But it doesn't understand us. It doesn't understand that humans don't run from what scares us. We run toward it. We fight it. We beat it. Not because we're strong. Not because we're smart. But because we're stubborn. Because we're brave. Because we love this galaxy, with all its wonders and all its terrors, and we refuse to let the darkness take it. Around her, the fleet began to engage. Weapons fire lit up the void. Ships moved to intercept the tendrils of darkness that reached for the Prometheus. Beings who had lived for millennia threw themselves against an ancient god without hesitation. Today, we stand together, Elena continued. Every species, every civilization, every soul who refuses to surrender to despair. Today, we show the universe what we're made of. Today, we fight. Today, we win. And if we die, she smiled. We die as heroes. We die as legends. We die as the beings who looked into the abyss and made it blink. The fleet roared in response. Thousands of voices in hundreds of languages. A battle cry that echoed across the void. And the Prometheus ascending flew into the heart of the Hollow King. Around them, chaos reigned. Ships were torn apart by forces that had no name. Beings older than stars screamed as the darkness touched them. The fleet was dying, giving everything to buy a single ship a few more minutes. But the Prometheus pushed through. Elena stood at the center of the bridge, watching the view screen. The darkness pressed in from all sides. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist. But ahead, she could see it, a point of light at the center of the void. The heart of the Hollow King, the place where the resonance core would be deployed. We're almost there, Okonkwo reported. His voice was calm despite the terror around them. 3 minutes to the core. All crew prepare for deployment, Elena ordered. This is it. This is everything we've been fighting for. She turned to Webb, her oldest friend, her most trusted ally. The man who had stood beside her through 100 battles. Marcus. Elena. There were no more words. There didn't need to be. 20 years of friendship, 20 years of war. Everything that needed to be said had been said long ago. Webb saluted. Elena returned it. And then she walked off the bridge for the last time. The resonance core waited for her in the cargo bay. A sphere of impossible light. A weapon built by gods. And at its center, a single chair. Her throne, her grave. Elena sat down. The neural interface activated, and the universe opened before her. She felt the Hollow King, its vastness, its hunger, Its ancient, endless hate. It had consumed civilizations, destroyed galaxies, existed since before time had meaning. And it looked at her, one small human woman, one fragile mind, and for the first time in 12,000 years, it felt something it did not recognize. Fear. "Hello," Elena said into the darkness. "My name is Elena Vasquez, and I'm here to kill you." She activated the resonance core, and the universe screamed. Elena Vasquez had thought she understood darkness. She had walked through the ruins of destroyed worlds. She had held dying soldiers in her arms. She had stared into the void between stars and felt its cold emptiness, but she had understood nothing. The Hollow King was darkness given form, hunger given thought, hate given eternity. When the neural interface connected her mind to the resonance core, she felt it all. Every memory of the ancient entity flooded through her. Every world it had consumed. Every civilization it had ended. Every scream it had silenced. She saw the beginning. Before the stars. Before time. The Hollow King had been born in the death of another universe. The last survivor of a reality that had burned itself out. It had crawled into the new cosmos like a parasite into a fresh host. And it had fed, and fed, and fed. She saw the war. 1,000 species united against the darkness. Beings of light and beings of shadow. Creatures of matter and creatures of pure energy. They had fought for 1,000,000 years. Died by the trillions. Sacrificed everything they were and everything they could be. And in the end, they had barely managed to force the king into slumber. Now Elena understood why the Concord had been so afraid. Why Yidris had spoken of the entity with such terror. The Hollow King wasn't just powerful. It was inevitable. A force of nature that could no more be stopped than gravity or time. Small thing. The voice filled her mind. Not words. Something deeper. Something that touched her soul directly. Bright thing. You think you can destroy me? I was old before your universe had stars. I will be here when your last sun dies. You are nothing. Less than nothing. Give up. Surrender. Sleep. It will be so peaceful. Elena felt the weight of that voice pressing down on her. The despair it carried. The hopelessness. 1,000,000 years of war. And the builders had only managed to put the king to sleep. What chance did one human have? None. The answer came not from the king, but from somewhere deep inside herself. A place the darkness could not touch. And that was okay. She wasn't here to win. She wasn't here to survive. She was here to buy time. To protect the things she loved. To give the galaxy one more day, one more year, one more century of starlight. That was enough. That had always been enough. Elena opened her eyes. Not her physical eyes. Those were far away, in a body sitting in a chair in a cargo bay. These were different eyes. The eyes of her consciousness. The eyes of her soul. She saw the heart of the Hollow King. A point of absolute darkness. The core of its being. The place where all its power originated. And she saw the resonance core. A spark of light in her hands. A weapon built by gods and wielded by a human. I'm not trying to win. She thought back at the king. I'm just trying to hurt you. She thrust the light into the darkness. The effect was immediate. The Hollow King screamed. A sound that echoed across dimensions. A cry of pain and rage that was heard by every being in the galaxy. Stars flickered. Planets trembled. The fabric of space itself rippled like water struck by a stone. What are you doing? Stop. Stop. But Elena didn't stop. She pushed deeper. Forced the resonance core further into the king's heart. She felt the weapon activating. Felt the frequencies aligning. Felt the ancient technology doing exactly what it was designed to do. The Hollow King was collapsing. Folding in on itself. Its vast consciousness being compressed into a single point. All that hunger. All that hate. All that power, being crushed into nothing, and Elena was going with it. She felt herself being pulled into the void. Her memories, her hopes, her dreams, everything that made her who she was, being drawn toward the collapsing center. Soon, there would be nothing left. No soul, no ghost. Just emptiness where Elena Vasquez had once existed. But before she went, she looked back one last time. She saw the Prometheus ascending. Her ship, her home, the crew still fighting to survive, still refusing to give up, still human to the end. She saw the fleet around it, hundreds of ships from dozens of species, beings who had come to fight beside humanity, to stand against the darkness, to prove that courage was not limited to one world. She saw the galaxy beyond. Billions of stars, trillions of worlds, countless souls who would never know her name but would live because of what she did today. It was beautiful. All of it. Even the darkness, even the void, even the Hollow King itself, in its terrible, magnificent way. Thank you, Elena thought. Thank you for letting me see this. Thank you for letting me be part of it. And then she turned back to face the end. The resonance core reached critical mass. The Hollow King's collapse accelerated. Elena felt herself being torn apart. Every atom of her being, every thought in her mind, every memory she had ever made. But even as she fell into the void, she smiled, because she heard something. A sound that echoed across the dying god's consciousness. A voice that somehow reached her even at the end of everything. Her mother's voice, from a memory she hadn't thought about in years. Don't be afraid, Elena. The dark is just the space between the stars, and the stars are always there, even when you can't see them. Elena closed her eyes, and the Hollow King died. The explosion was silent. In the vacuum of space, there was no sound to mark the death of a god. But those who witnessed it would never forget what they saw. The darkness that had spread across 50 light-years simply collapsed, folded in on itself, compressed into a point so small that it seemed to vanish entirely. And then, where the Hollow King had been, there was light. A new star burst into existence, brighter than any sun, burning with colors that had no names. It hung in the void where only darkness had been, a beacon visible from across the galaxy. The Prometheus ascending tumbled through space, its systems damaged but intact. On the bridge, Commander Marcus Webb pulled himself up from the deck and stared at the view screen. The star burned before him. Beautiful. Impossible. A gift from the woman who had given everything. Captain? Lieutenant Park's voice was shaking. Captain Vasquez, please respond. Silence. Webb walked to the intercom. His legs felt weak. His heart felt heavy. But his voice was steady when he spoke. This is Commander Webb. All hands. The mission is complete. The Hollow King is destroyed. He paused, swallowed hard. Captain Elena Vasquez, the captain is gone. She did it. She saved us all. The ship was quiet. 100 souls processing what they had witnessed, what they had lost. Then, from somewhere in the lower decks, a voice began to sing. A human voice. An old song about sailors lost at sea. Others joined in. Then more, and more, until the entire ship was singing. A funeral hymn, a victory anthem, a celebration and a mourning combined into one. Outside, the fleet began to gather around the newborn star. Ships from every species. Vessels that had fought and bled and died to buy the Prometheus time. Many were gone now, destroyed in the battle, but those who remained came to pay their respects, to honor the woman who had done the impossible, to remember the human who had looked into the void and refused to blink. The days that followed were strange. Across the galaxy, beings woke from nightmares they hadn't known they were having. The Hollow King's influence had spread further than anyone realized. Its whispers had touched minds on 1,000 worlds. Its despair had poisoned hope itself. But now it was gone. Truly gone. For the first time in 12,000 years, the darkness had been lifted. On the Concord station, the High Council convened to process what had happened. The chamber was fuller than it had been in centuries. Representatives from every species in the Alliance, and many who were not, all come to discuss the same thing. The humans. Counselor Yidris stood at the center of the room. The ancient being had not spoken since the battle, had barely moved. Now, finally, it raised its silver mask and addressed the assembly. We have witnessed something remarkable, Yidris said, something unprecedented in all the long history of our galaxy. A species barely a century old among the stars has done what 1,000 civilizations could not. They have destroyed the Hollow King. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Not all friendly. They also woke the king in the first place. Counselor Threx hissed. Their foolishness nearly doomed us all. Their foolishness saved us all. Yidris's voice was sharp. Yes, they entered the Forbidden Zone. Yes, they broke our laws. But they did so to save their own people. And when they discovered the consequences of their actions, they did not run. They did not hide. They faced the darkness head-on and destroyed it. One of them destroyed it. Mirtha corrected. One single human. who sacrificed herself for beings she had never met. Yes, Yidris turned to face the metal counselor. One human, one small, fragile, mortal human. She could have fled. She could have let the galaxy burn. No one would have blamed her. But instead, she sat in that chair, connected her mind to an ancient god, and dragged it into oblivion with her. The chamber was silent. I have lived for a very long time, Yidris continued. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species evolve from nothing and return to nothing. I have witnessed the birth of stars and the death of galaxies, but I have never, in all my countless years, seen anything like the humans. Should we fear them? Someone asked. The same question that had been asked in this chamber weeks ago, before the Prometheus had entered the zone, before everything had changed. Yidris was quiet for a long moment. No, the ancient being finally said. We should not fear them. We should learn from them. They have something we lost long ago, something we gave up in exchange for safety and stability. They have hope, true hope, the kind that burns so brightly it can illuminate even the darkest void. Yidris walked toward the great window that looked out upon the stars. Far away, barely visible, the new star burned. Vasquez's light, the humans had named it. A monument to sacrifice. The galaxy will never be the same, Yidris said softly. The humans have changed us. All of us. They have shown us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. They have shown us that hope is not naive, but necessary. They have shown us that even the smallest light can push back against the endless dark. The ancient being turned back to the chamber. When the darkness came, we hid. We ran. We sealed away the threat and pretended it didn't exist. But the humans, they fought. They sacrificed. They won. Yidris paused. And now, when every species in this galaxy looks up at the stars, they will see that new sun burning, and they will remember what one small human woman did for them. And maybe, just maybe, they will learn to be a little bit more human themselves. The council erupted into discussion, arguments and debates that would continue for centuries. But the decision had already been made. Not in this chamber, but in the heart of a dying god. By a woman who refused to give up. The galaxy was changed. Forever. 3 months later, a memorial station was completed in orbit around Vasquez's light. A place of pilgrimage for every species in the galaxy. A monument to sacrifice. A reminder of what was possible when beings chose hope over fear. The station was built by 1,000 hands. Concord engineers and Rytheny craftsmen, human architects and beings from worlds that had never seen Earth. They worked together in silence, united by a shared purpose, by a shared grief, by a shared gratitude. At the center of the station was a garden, real plants from Earth, grass and flowers and trees that had evolved beneath a yellow sun. A piece of humanity, preserved forever at the heart of a newborn star. And at the center of the garden was a statue. It showed a woman sitting in a chair. Her eyes were closed. Her face was peaceful. Her hands rested on armrests that glowed with carved light. She looked like she was sleeping, dreaming, at peace. Beneath the statue was an inscription, carved in 1,000 languages, written so that every being in the galaxy could read it and understand. Captain Elena Vasquez, Terran Union Navy. She looked into the void and found her humanity. And below that, a phrase that would come to define a species, a motto that would be carved into every human ship, a battle cry that would echo across the stars for 10,000 years. We do not go gentle. Commander Marcus Webb stood before the statue on the day of its dedication. He had been promoted to captain now, given command of the Prometheus ascending. It was an honor he hadn't wanted, a burden he would carry for the rest of his life. Around him, thousands of beings had gathered. Humans and aliens, friends and strangers, all come to remember, to honor, to mourn. Webb had prepared a speech, words about duty and sacrifice, about courage and hope, about what Elena had meant to him, to the crew, to the galaxy. But when he opened his mouth, different words came out. She was my friend, he said simply. For 20 years, she was my friend. She was stubborn and brilliant and brave. She never backed down from a fight, never left anyone behind, never stopped believing that tomorrow could be better than today. He paused, looked up at the statue, at the peaceful face of the woman who had saved everything. She used to say that humans were special because we couldn't help hoping. Even when things looked impossible, even when the darkness seemed endless, we kept hoping, kept fighting, kept reaching for the stars. Webb smiled, a sad, proud smile. She was right. Hope is what makes us human. And she had more hope than anyone I've ever known. He stepped back. Let others come forward. Let them say their pieces, share their memories, offer their thanks. The ceremony lasted for hours. Beings from across the galaxy spoke of what Elena's sacrifice meant to them, what it had taught them, how it had changed them. And when it was over, when the crowds had dispersed and the station had grown quiet, Commander Webb stood alone in the garden, looking at the statue, listening to the gentle hum of the life support systems, feeling the warmth of Vasquez's light streaming through the windows. "We did it, Elena," he said quietly. "We saved the galaxy, just like you planned, just like you always knew we would." The statue didn't respond. It couldn't. Elena was gone, truly gone, not dead, but erased. Nothing left but memories and legends. But Webb could have sworn, just for a moment, that he felt something. A presence, a warmth, a whisper that might have been the wind, or might have been something more. "Rest well, old friend," he said. "The galaxy is safe. The stars are still burning. And somewhere, right now, a little girl is looking up at the sky and dreaming of the future." He saluted the statue one final time. Then he turned and walked away. Above him, Vasquez's light burned on. A beacon in the darkness, a promise to the future, a reminder that even the smallest person can change the universe. And across the galaxy, wherever beings gathered and stories were told, the legend of the human woman who killed a god grew and grew. It would be passed down through generations, told around fires on 1,000 worlds, written into the histories of 100 civilizations. The story of Captain Elena Vasquez, the story of the Prometheus ascending, the story of the day humanity showed the galaxy what it truly meant to be human. And whenever someone asked why the humans were so important, why they were treated with such respect, why species that had existed for millions of years deferred to a civilization barely a century among the stars, the answer was always the same. Because when the darkness came, the humans stood, and when the darkness fell, a human was there to catch it. That was their legacy. That was their gift. That was their humanity.